for watching Stitchless TV. I've just come back from Milan. I've been at Shingo Sato's TR cutting school, which is the most amazing Japanese pattern cutting techniques. It was this crazy, intensive course. 3 days, living, sleeping, eating, all together. We went bananas. So today I'm going to bring a little bit of Shingo into your lives. So come and have a look. This is called an integrated, draped, manipulated heart. Quite a mouthful, isn't it? And this is one of the pieces that I did when I was in Milan. And I'm going to show you a simplified stitchless way to create the same effect. Now look, this is what happens. You can undo it, you see, and you can tie it in all sorts of ways. You might want to tie it so it goes around your neck like that. Wow, that would be fantastic. Now, the real Shingo Sato TR cutting way is to integrate it into a seam, so it seems like it's just kind of growing out of your top. Now that involves a little bit of skill, so if you want to know how to do that, go to see Shingo Sato. But we today are going to do it so we make up our draped heart with a tie, and then we just applique it onto anything. So this is the stitchless way. So what we need today is a t-shirt that fits us. I've got this V-neck t-shirt from Uniqlo, and then another t-shirt that's much bigger that I'm using for the material, and then I just need a little bit of a non-stretchy fabric that I'm going to use for the base of my heart. So the first thing that we need to do is to draw out a heart. You can do it any size that you want. I'm going to do mine so it goes around my boobies there and comes down to my belly button. So you get your bit of cotton, and you need a biro because it gives you a good clean line, and then roughly draw out how you want your heart to look. Okay, and then afterwards you're going to come in with a tool that Shingo loves, and it's called a French curve, and it's just very good for cleaning up your curved lines. So I'm going to go around and clean up my curved lines now, and I'll show you when I'm done. So look, what I've done is I've just drawn it out on one side, and then I'm folding the fabric, because there's no point, if I want a symmetrical heart, you may not want a symmetrical heart. And then I'm just going to come in, and then I'm going to cut that out. Right, well I'm happy with that. So that's going to act as my template, and it's going to be the backing of the draped heart. It will all make sense in a minute. So I'm going to get rid of that t-shirt, and I'm going to move on to the other t-shirt, which is all about using it for the material. So I'm going to cut up the side seam and just open it out, so it just ends up just being a big piece of fabric. For this one, I'm just going to do it so it ties in a knot, and not so it ties in a big bow, because I haven't got enough length in my t-shirt to do it in a bow. But if you want a bow, you just continue these lines off for longer. So what we do is we start at the point, and we come a bit wider than the heart, and then we just carry on going off in a straight line there. Okay, now I'm going to do the same on this side, or a similar thing on this side. You can kind of play around as you're doing it. Okay, so look, I'm still deciding the angle that I want the ties to go off to. I've still got the label on, so I think that will be okay if it goes down here like this. And they don't even need to be exactly the same width, do they? They could be different widths. So I've got mine different lengths and different widths. Now you see here, I've come wider here. I'm nearer here because I didn't have any choice, and I've got this point here away. The reason is because what happens is we drape it in there, and then we bring that in there, and it creates like a bit of excess fabric which forms nice drapes inside. So now what we do is we take our heart off, and everything's right sides up, and then we place our t-shirt fabric on top of the heart exactly. Now when I was with Shingo Sato, I broke all of my rules of no pins. Everything we did involved using pins. I couldn't believe it. So this is my way of doing his technique without pins. Okay, so ready to begin. Now what we're going to do this without pins. Shingo will go mad. We're going to find a location that's fairly high up on this heart, and I'm just going to put a tiny little notch there, like that. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side, just sort of feeding the fabric up, and I'm going to put a little notch quite high up there as well, actually. And then what I want you to do is, I want you to sew from the bottom of this point coming up to there, and then the bottom of the point coming up on the other side, using a straight stitch, which is a D on my mini JL. So I want you 5mm away from the edge, which I think is 1/4 of an inch, backwards and forwards to begin, just a little bit, and sewing 5mm from the edge, carefully making sure you don't stretch that jersey, and it is quite curly, so it might be a little bit annoying, and taking it up until your notches meet. Right, so starting from the point at the bottom, just do exactly the same on the other side, and stop when you get to where your notches meet. So I've stitched up both of those sides, just up to the notch, and then see this little V bit? I'm just going to bring it to match up with the V on my white heart that was underneath, and I want you to sew about 2 centimetres, an inch from one side, coming down, pivoting the needle, and then coming up on the other side, and just stopping there. So you can see it's coming together. So that's what we've got. So now what we have to do is, we've done this bit here, we've stitched in that little V. So now what we have to do is, we've just got to get this fabric, can you see this fabric here? And all I'm doing is, I'm just gently, without any stretching, I'm just going to see how much fabric it takes to fit around the edge of the hump of that heart. Would that be correct, the hump of the heart? Mm-hmm. And then when I get to the bit where I finished my stitching there, because you remember I stitched a couple of centimetres there. When I get there, I just made a little notch to show me where that is. And then what I do, I take the fabric, okay, and I'm going to put it right sides together now, because I'm going to make a tube. But the important thing is this, come and have a look. My notch has to match up with where I'd stop sewing there, in that little V of the heart. And all I am sewing is the jersey of the T-shirt to make a long tie. So I'm going to sew now using a straight stitch to wherever it stops, using a straight stitch going down to about there. So I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Now because it's a tie, I'm actually going to tell you to stretch a little bit as you sew, just a little bit, because otherwise when you tie it and you pull it, your threads might break. So you'll see it's all twisted, but it will be all right in the end, you'll see. Now look, that was as far as I could go there with that. So now what you need to do is make sure it's all flat when you get it into a flat position, and then you're just going to sew diagonally there to finish it off into a little point. So that's the end of the tie. Look, I just roughly went along in a kind of diagonal line. I'm going to chop off all these bits, and now I'll show you what happens when we turn it the right way round. So I'll stick my hand in, because it does seem to be big enough. Push the points in, out. We've got one tie here, but we'll press it. When you press it, because of the nature of the way that we've done it, it twists. Come and look at this seam. See how it twists? So you get that sort of twist line there. So that's the way that you're pressing it, okay? You're not going to be able to press it into a perfect tube, but it will be flat. Look, it's lovely and flat. So this is our tie now. Now this, come and have a look. This is that little bit. Do you remember we measured it to go around to find out where we start the tie? Now we've got to stitch all of that back on so that it meets up with the tie there. But make sure that you don't catch any of that fabric here. So So 5 mils from the edge and no stretching of anything. Just feed the fabric, going around the edge until you meet up with your stitch by the notch. So that's one side, one of our ties to our draped heart. So just do exactly the same on the other side. So for my second tie, I left it kind of a bit longer when I was cutting it out, but you know what? I don't want it that long. So I've stitched down here. So I've cut off all of that. So look, I just used an old t-shirt that I didn't want anymore. How brilliant is that? So this is what we've got. We've got this kind of draping going on here because we cut it a bit wider and we cut it a bit higher. These are our ties, which can be as long or as short as you want. So you just tie them in a nice knot if you want, or you can leave them hanging down. Okay, and yet we still keep the heart shape. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put it onto this t-shirt. Wow, that's fantastic. Do you know what I'm going to do now? In order to hold it into place whilst I sew it, I'm going to use some of this brilliant 606 fusible adhesive spray, which I got from Sewing Online. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn over my heart. I'm going to get the spray. Now this is actually quite important. I don't want the spray to go all the way to the edges. I want it to be mainly in this middle area around here. And what I do, I let it go off for a little bit, so we just sort of sing a song or something for a few minutes. And when you think it's dry, which it more or less is, and go, because it's not sticky at this stage, so I can play around with the position of it, which is why this stuff's really good. So I'm going to work out exactly where I want it to fall. So I want the V of the heart to fall in the V of the actual neck of the top. So I get that in position, because once it's stuck, oh my goodness, once it's stuck, it's stuck. Well, it isn't actually, this stuff, it doesn't stick permanently. So when you've got it in place, you're going to have to push all the drapey bits out the way whilst you press it into position. Now I am using a bit of steam, even though it says you don't need steam. So that will hold it in place enough for me to be able to sew. So I'm moving the drapes from the other side now, moving them out of the way, making sure that the heart is flat, and I'm going to press that side. And I just keep doing that all the way around until it's held in place. Now the beautiful thing about sticking it with the 606 spray first is, look, how would I sew this heart onto here really easily? It'd be really difficult because look, I've got a narrow t-shirt. So now I can sew it knowing that it's not going to move around. Okay, so I'm going to sew 5 mil away from the edge. You can use the same stitch line that you used before if you want. So off we go. Just go all around the edge of the heart. Now I know you think that those raw edges are looking a little bit messy, but at the end we're going to go all the way around with a really sharp pair of scissors and trim them all off. Look, don't be afraid to come off. You don't have to do it all in one hit. It's not a race, you know. So look, I started there, I came up here, I went around here, and then I started to get a bit nervous as I was coming round on the other side. So I've stopped. So I'm taking a little break and then I'm going to go around there. Right, so I've done that. Now, I'm not going to tie these yet because these are the messy bits that I was talking about. So I'm going to go in and trim them off, but wow, you have to be really, really careful. I'm holding it with my arm inside and I've got the kind of raw edge running along my finger, and I've got really sharp scissors, okay, really sharp scissors. And then I'm just sliding it along and then just cutting, feeling really nervous about the prospect of cutting my t-shirt. But if you're just careful and you're not in a hurry, then you get a nice clean edge. Look at that lovely clean edge there. So just do that all the way around. So if you're brave and you do trim off all of those edges, look, that's just great. And when you wash it, it will distress really nicely and just sort of fray up a little bit. So you ready to see Dolores? Look at that. Hey, Shingo Sato, eat your heart out. So for this one, I used an old T-shirt that was the same sort of colour and fabric as this T-shirt. But imagine the possibilities. You could use a vintage scarf, couldn't you, on a lovely Breton top or something. Shall I try it on? Are you ready? Look at that. What do you think of that? Woo! I love it. Thanks a lot for watching Stitchless TV, and keep all of those comments coming. Just remember, send those photos to my Facebook page. Bye.